My name is Emma. I'm 34. Trauma nurse. Type A. The one who never cries at work, even when a kid flatlines on my table. I've walked families through loss, watched life leave eyes that were just smiling 5 minutes earlier. I thought I'd seen the worst people could endure. But nothing prepared me for what I was about to live through. This is the story of how I lost my husband, my therapist, and my sense of reality at the exact same time. And how I got it all back by burning everything to the ground. It started in the most ordinary way. Laundry. A cold rotisserie chicken for dinner. Silence between us for the 3rd night in a row. That's how most marriages rot. Not with shouting, but with quiet. Caleb and I had been together 7 years. Married for 5. We were that picture-perfect couple on social media. Matching Halloween costumes, Pinterest engagement photos, #blessed anniversaries. But real life? It was quieter, colder, lonelier. Caleb had been distant for months. He stopped asking how my shifts were going, made vague excuses to stay late at work, then came home and gave me nothing but grunts and shoulder taps. The sex? Forget it. Emotional intimacy? Gone. And yet, every time I brought it up, he said the same thing. There's nothing wrong, Emma. You're overthinking again. So eventually, I stopped complaining. But I didn't stop hurting. That's when I made the appointment. A friend at the hospital recommended her, Dr. Victoria Langford. She really helped me process my divorce, she said. Straight shooter. Super compassionate. You'll like her. And that first session? She instantly made me feel seen. Dr. Vic had that gentle, welcoming therapist energy like a yoga instructor who also reads Jung. Cozy office, soft throw blankets, chamomile diffusers quietly hissing stress into the air. She offered me tea. We sat cross-legged like old girlfriends, and I unloaded 5 years of resentment onto her rug. And I'll admit it, I felt better. Like maybe I wasn't going crazy. Like maybe my instincts were worth listening to after all. Especially when she said things like, your sensitivity isn't a flaw. It's your warning light. And it's blinking for a reason. And sometimes people create silence when they're hiding something they don't want you to see. Week after week, I spilled my guts to her. And she just nodded, gently guiding me to deeper truths. I told her things I'd never even said out loud. About feeling invisible in my own home, about watching the man I loved slip away inch by inch until I couldn't even remember who I married. And not once did she interrupt. She just let me bleed. She also never mentioned him, never asked to meet him, just kept her focus on me and, subtly, on what I was missing. You give so much, she'd say, eyes intense. Maybe ask yourself why you're settling for breadcrumbs when you deserve the whole table. I walked out of those sessions lighter, empowered, ready to confront the uncomfortable parts of my marriage with strength. But things only got worse at home. One night, I came home early from work, surprise Thai takeout in hand, and found Caleb laughing upstairs in the bedroom. Not just laughing, gut laughing. I smiled, thinking maybe he was watching old college football clips. But as I came up the stairs, his laugh stopped abrupt. I pushed open the door, and he slammed his laptop shut so fast it startled me. Hey, I said, pretending not to notice it. What's funny? Just a stupid meme, he replied too quickly. He wasn't even smiling anymore. His face was stiff, dry. His hand gripped the laptop. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I didn't push. I was tired, and God knows I wanted to believe him. That was my first real mistake. Because what I didn't know was that his laughter, that joy, it wasn't from a TV show or sports or some meme. It was from her, from my therapist. But I wouldn't find that out until weeks later. First, there were the flowers. Random, out-of-character flowers. Bright tulips I hated. A handwritten note. Love you. Trying harder. Trying harder? I asked where it came from. Just felt like you needed something sweet, he said. Caleb hated spending money on flowers. Years ago, he told me they were a waste of cash. But now he was buying them unprovoked? My gut stirred again. I asked Dr. Vic about it in our next session. Told her Caleb was suddenly acting warm again, flirtatious, even. That's good, right? she asked carefully. I guess. I just don't trust it. It almost feels like he's performing. Like he knows I'm watching. She nodded, lips parted as if she was about to say something, then stopped. Sometimes guilt makes people overcompensate, she finally said. Sometimes when someone feels exposed, they dress it up as affection. I remember that so well. The phrasing. The way her voice lowered when she said exposed. A chill ran through me, but I still didn't get it. Not yet. Because betrayal doesn't always slap you across the face. Sometimes it lets you speak, lets you cry, lets you confess your weaknesses, while recording every word for later. The moment it all changed was a stupid Sunday morning. I went to grab my iPad off the kitchen counter. Caleb's account was still signed in. A text bubble popped up. My breath caught the second I saw the name. Dr. Vic. Message. Counting minutes till I feel you again. My heart stopped. I stared at that glowing screen, every ounce of blood draining from my face. No. 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 But it was there. Undeniable. Real. The messages kept rolling in, flirty, graphic, full of secrets. I clicked into the thread. Photos. Videos. Inside jokes about me. Even laughing about what I'd said in therapy. One text burned hotter than the rest. Dr. Vic. She asked if you were cheating today. Had to bite my tongue not to laugh. I wanted to vomit. The woman I poured my heart out to, the woman who told me to trust my instincts, was sleeping with my husband and coaching me through the grief she helped cause. I didn't scream, didn't throw the iPad. Instead, I calmly transferred every message into a secret folder. Every photo, every word, every lie. And I made a decision that would change everything. I wasn't just going to confront them, I was going to expose them. My hands were shaking, but my mind was crystal clear. I sat at the kitchen table for nearly an hour, just staring at the screen like it might all disappear. But it didn't. The text stayed. The photos were still there. My husband's name was still attached to them, like a smear I couldn't wipe off. And there it was, her name too, Dr. Vic, rubbing salt into the word safe. It turns out, when you catch your marriage combusting in real time, you don't scream immediately. You plan. I made 3 backup copies of their entire conversation. Printed everything. Sent it to 3 cloud drives under coded folders because I wasn't just angry, I was methodical. Weeks of spilled secrets. Session transcripts she referenced. Him talking about me like I was a puzzle he was solving, while screwing the one person who knew which edges didn't fit. I wasn't going to confront them. Not yet. That would have ended the story too soon. No, I needed to hurt them the way they hurt me. In silence. With precision. And that starts with knowing who you're really dealing with. I spent the next 2 days researching everything I could about Dr. Victoria Langford. Her education. License number. Clinic protocols. I learned words I never thought I'd need. Dual relationship. Breach of duty. Transference exploitation. She hadn't just broken my heart. She'd broken laws. A therapist engaging in a romantic or sexual relationship with a partner of a current patient. That wasn't just immoral. That was grounds for revocation. Especially since I was still her client while she was doing it. Weekly sessions where she stared at me like compassion lived behind her eyes, all while undressing my life behind my back. The next step was Caleb. He didn't suspect a thing. He was in that guilty boyfriend stage, where he started randomly doing dishes and noticing details like my perfume. He even initiated a date night, like string lights and overpriced salmon could undo betrayal. I accepted the invitation. Smiled through it. Let him pretend. At that dinner, he reached for my hand and said, I know I've been off lately, but I think we're turning a corner. I wanted to ask him, did you text her from the bathroom before this? Instead, I just nodded. When we got home, and he was in the shower, I stood in front of the mirror and stared at myself for a long time. For months, I'd thought I didn't look good enough. That's why he pulled away. My body. My burnout from nursing. My aging skin, my thinning patience. But no, I didn't lose him because I wasn't enough. He lost me because he had no idea what I was capable of when pushed to the edge. Later that night, I scheduled what would become the final therapy session, using Caleb's name and email to book a couple's counseling appointment with Dr. Vic. Their little fantasy bubble was about to pop. He bought the bait with a smile. "You really want us to do counseling?" he said, face lighting up like he deserved a prize. "Wow, that means a lot." I hugged him, held him tight, and whispered, "Let's heal together." What I didn't say was, we weren't there to heal ******. We were there to end it all. The day of the appointment, I felt electric. I put on a soft beige sweater she once complimented during session 2, back when I still thought safe space meant something. My makeup was light, intentional, matching lipstick to confidence. I looked like the picture of a forgiving wife, one who just wanted to fix things, and that made what came next so much better. We arrived early. Sat in the parking lot for 8 minutes. Caleb looked nervous, ironically. Maybe because some part of him knew we were walking into a reckoning. She opened the door with her usual, serene smile crap. "Hi, Emma." "Caleb, please come in." She greeted him like someone would greet a returning lover, but in code. That false professionalism wrapped around her every word like perfume trying to cover a crime. We sat across from her on that stupid gray couch. The same place where I once sobbed about my fear of abandonment, not realizing she was behind it. "So," she said gently, "what brings you two here together today?" I locked eyes with her, held them. "I just thought it was the perfect time," I said calmly, "to be transparent, open, honest." She smiled in that sickly counselor way. "Of course." I pulled the envelope out of my bag and placed it on the table. "There's something I need you both to see." She paused, just a flicker, then picked it up. Eyes scanning, recognizing the format. The screenshots. She didn't speak, but her hand trembled. Caleb peered over, confused, until he saw his own name. His face. The texts. His stomach dropped visually, like I could actually see it sink behind his ribs. "What the hell is this?" he stammered. I looked at him with a straight face. "It's your affair. With my therapist. You know, the woman who heard all my fears and offered to hold them for me while she was holding you too." He started sputtering. I didn't, but fell quiet. Dr. Vic tried, weakly, "Emma, I think we need to unpack this in a healthier." "No," I snapped. Not yelled, snapped. "You don't get to steer this with your therapist tricks. You violated me. Professionally. Personally. Intimately." I leaned forward. "I trusted you with my insomnia, my marriage, my grief, and you took all of it and weaponized it to get close to my husband. You're not a therapist. You're a predator in business casual." Their eyes were wide, panicked. My voice didn't shake once. And that's when I dropped the real nuke. I filed a complaint last night with the state board. Every message, every conflict of interest is already submitted. Your license is officially under investigation. Caleb turned to her like she'd just handed him ruin on a platter. "You said they'd never find out. That it wasn't a big deal." Dr. Vic didn't respond. She was pale. Her mouth moved, but nothing came out. Her empire was crumbling quietly right there on that plush IKEA rug. I stood up, checked my phone, and turned to leave. "Oh, and Caleb?" I said at the door. He looked up pathetic. "I hope she was worth the career. 'Cause y'all just lost something way bigger than me." It's incredible how calm your brain gets once everything burns down. I didn't cry when I left that therapy session. I didn't text my best friend or call my mom or go get drunk. I didn't scream at the sky or tear my wedding photos off the wall. I just went home, sat on the edge of my bathtub, looked at myself in the mirror, and whispered 4 words. "Now we begin again." Because when people betray you like that, intimately, psychologically, the world doesn't just collapse. It reshapes. And if you're smart enough, if you stand still and stop crying long enough, you realize something powerful. You survived. So what do when survival isn't enough? You make sure the people who tried to shatter you bleed consequences. I had already filed the official complaint with the state licensing board. The investigation into Dr. Vic's conduct was underway. But that wasn't enough. She didn't just take my private information and twist it. She did it for pleasure, for power. And Caleb? He didn't just cheat. He used my mental health sessions to manipulate how guilty he felt about it. He fed her stories about me, what bothered me, what made me tick, and they used it like ammo against me.
So no.
Silence wasn't satisfying. The world needed to hear what I had to say. That was the night I quietly started a blog under a pseudonym. It wasn't some flashy tell-all with neon headlines. Just a simple black and white homepage titled, "The Safe Space That Wasn't." I started from the beginning. Stripped the names, the specifics. No Caleb. No Vic, just my husband, my therapist, and my truth. I wrote for hours. I chronicled how I walked into that office every week thinking someone was helping me, only to realize she was collecting information to get closer to my husband. I wrote how she looked in my eyes as I cried about being cheated on, not realizing she was the one doing the cheating. It wasn't revenge porn. It was catharsis.
Clean.
Measured. Chilling. And it spread faster than I ever could have predicted. Within a week, the blog had 38,000 views. People started commenting anonymously. Therapists, clients, cheated wives, broken men, people from all walks of life who related deeply and painfully to what it feels like when trust is broken by the people we count on most. One comment just said, "This happened to my mom. She never recovered." Another, "My therapist got emotionally involved with me and ghosted me when I got too dependent. This isn't rare, just rarely spoken about." And the worst, "I think you just described the woman who used to work at my clinic." That's when I knew something bigger was happening. This wasn't just my story. It was hundreds of people's. I started getting emails. One message stood out, a woman named Clara. She said reading my blog nearly sent her into a panic attack.
Why?
Because the therapist I described sounded exactly like her old counselor from 4 years ago. Clara had never gone public, but she told me Vic encouraged obsessive emotional attachment. She used phrases like, "You and I connect on a rare level," and "I feel how heavy your energy is even after you leave." I was stunned. It was the exact same technique she used on me. Clara told me her sessions with Dr. Vic ended suddenly, with no closure. The connection disappeared when Clara questioned her intentions. She'd been carrying her therapy fallout like lead weights for years. I asked her, "Would you be willing to give a statement to the board?" She took 2 days, then said yes. She wasn't the only one. 3 more women reached out with incredibly similar experiences. Emotional grooming, blurred boundaries, some subtle, some explicit. But the theme was always the same. Dr. Victoria Langford blurred helping with hurting. I bundled everything, timelines, statements, digital receipts, and sent them to the state investigator already assigned to my case. I asked for confirmation that their stories would be protected. Once that was secured, I deleted the emails from my inbox and sat back. Now it was in motion. Bigger than me. I could finally breathe. Meanwhile, the blog kept blowing up. A popular therapy YouTube channel did a voiceover reading of my first post, and it went viral. 500,000 views in 2 days. Reddit forums were dissecting every paragraph. People were sleuthing, comparing therapist bios, trying to guess who it was. I kept quiet. I never gave it away. The goal wasn't to destroy her personally. It was to show the world what happens when trust is professionally exploited. What I didn't expect was what happened with Caleb. A couple weeks after the blog started trending, he sent me an email. Not a phone call. Not a message. An old-school email that should have told me how scared he was. Subject line, "I know you hate me, but please read this." I hovered over it for 5 full minutes before clicking. And when I did, I didn't feel sympathy. I felt disgust. He apologized in the most Caleb way possible, talking about how he got in over his head and never thought things would go that far. He said it started innocently, and that he thought, "You already knew I was pulling away." Then he wrote one sentence that almost made me laugh out loud. "I don't think she ever really cared about me either." Oh, so now you realize? Now that she's under investigation and her license is hanging by a thread? Spare me. I didn't reply. Not just because I was done with his cowardice, but because I realized something. He had already been punished enough. I didn't need to scream at him. I didn't need to drag him through the blog. I didn't even have to rip into him legally or financially. No, the man who loses a woman who loved him at her most raw and honest, and trades her for validation wrapped in manipulation, he's already living his consequence.
Me?
I was beginning anew. And the most satisfying part? They couldn't stop it. Her license review was now public record. People across the city were talking. And I had more women willing to come forward if it meant saving others from falling into her helpful hands. I wasn't done writing. But now, the story wasn't just about revenge. It had become about reclaiming every part of myself they thought I'd bury quietly. I thought once the blog went viral, once the evidence was out and her license was under review, that the hard part was over. But the truth doesn't just settle. It sweeps. It erupts. It keeps going until every corner she crept into gets dragged into the light. And it started with an email. Simple subject line. I think she did something to me too. At first, I thought it was a mistake. Some person confusing their therapist drama with mine. But then I opened it. It was from a woman named Carrie. The email was long, rambling. She apologized repeatedly for messaging me, said she'd read my blog too many times to admit, and couldn't stop shaking while typing this. Then, in the middle of the message, she wrote a sentence that punched through me. She told me I reminded her of someone she once loved. Sound familiar? Because she told me that too. That we had a rare connection. That she kept thinking about me between sessions. That I had a soul that vibrated in her bones. It sounded poetic at first.
Disarming.
Comforting. Now I see it for what it really was, a script. A practice manipulation, not reserved for just me. Carrie had seen Dr. Vic 5 years earlier. She'd been dealing with grief, anxiety, and abandonment issues. Vic had helped her at first, then started messaging her outside their sessions. Texts, late-night voice notes, comments on social media that blurred all kinds of boundaries. It got emotional, then obsessive. She said if I stopped coming to therapy, it would break her heart, Carrie explained. I thought she meant as a friend, or a healer. But one night, she kissed me after a session, grabbed my face, said she didn't care about rules anymore. Carrie never went back. She had carried the shame alone for 5 years, convinced it was her fault, that maybe she had led Vic on. She even wrote an apology email back then and buried it in her drafts, too afraid to send. I sat there, frozen at my laptop. My hands clenched so tight, they went cold. This wasn't just about my husband anymore. Dr. Vic didn't fall into an affair. She had a pattern. She broke people. I asked Carrie if she'd be willing to speak with an investigator. I promised she could be anonymous. She took 3 days and finally sent back. I'm scared, but I don't want to be silent anymore. I forwarded her details to the state board, attached her email with permission. By then, the lead investigator and I had already spoken on Zoom twice, and they were very interested in the pattern of concern. But Carrie wasn't the only one. Over the next week, 4 more women came forward. 2 through my blog's contact form. 1 through a therapist subreddit where my story was reposted. 1 through pure accident. She was a mutual connection on LinkedIn who saw my blog featured on a podcast. Same descriptions. Same behaviors. Different victims. Vic had left a wake of emotionally dependent women, former clients who had either crossed inappropriate lines with her or had been groomed and ghosted, emotionally dropped mid-treatment when things blurred too far. One woman said her depression worsened after Vic abruptly cut her off with zero termination plan. Another said she blamed herself for years for treating therapy like friendship, not realizing it was being encouraged by Vic all along. I wrote everything down. The board was now fully invested, and they were requesting a formal, in-person hearing, not just for my case, but for others as well. The idea of seeing her again? Yes, it made my hands sweat. But fear was a much smaller voice now. I had a chorus of truth behind me. And then, just when I thought the final blows had been delivered, another message came through. This one shattered everything. Subject: you don't know me, but I think we're family. Yeah, family. I stared at those words like they were in another language. The message was from a woman named Rachel, late 20s, lived 300 miles away. She claimed she found me through a DNA testing service, said our profiles matched as half-sisters. Half-sisters. I didn't believe it at first. Thought it had to be a scam. But she knew things. My mother's hometown. My father's birth date. She even referenced our shared cousin, someone I hadn't seen in years. We hopped on a video call that Sunday. Same nose. Same weird laugh, snort when surprised. Same birthmark on our arm, different placement, but impossible to fake. And then came the part that made my jaw hit the table. Rachel told me she grew up without a dad. Her mom told her 2 years ago, on her deathbed, that her biological father was a married man, that he had a wife and a daughter.
Me.
Suddenly, all the missing pieces started falling into place. She said she tried therapy to process the abandonment. Her world was rocked. She had identity issues, trust problems, borderline anxiety. Therapy seemed like the right move. Can you guess where she ended up?
Yeah.
Dr. Victoria Langford. My chest tightened as she talked. She told me not to dig, that maybe finding my father would open more wounds. She said maybe certain truths were best left buried. She was talking about my father. She had known. She had the puzzle. She held the edges in her hand and still let Rachel believe her real family didn't want her. And when Rachel stopped going to therapy, Vic never followed up because it didn't serve her anymore. I was speechless, shaking, gripping the arms of my chair like the room was spinning. That woman, that therapist, didn't just violate boundaries. She decided who got to feel love, who got to heal, who deserved peace. She sat across from me for months helping me heal, while keeping my own sister a secret. I cried for the first time in weeks after that call. Not because of Caleb, not because of the affair, but because for the first time someone I should have had in my life had been kept away from me not by accident but by design. They told me I didn't have to testify if I didn't want to. I could submit a statement. Stay anonymous. Let the licensing board handle it behind closed doors. But no. After everything Dr. Vic took from me, after the secrets, the manipulation, the husband, the trust, the family, she didn't deserve silence. She deserved to see my face. The hearing room wasn't dramatic, no courtroom theatrics and no media circus. Just a sterile government office, a long wooden table, and 3 people reviewing whether Dr. Victoria Langford should ever be allowed to practice again. She was already suspended. Her clients had disappeared. Her glowing online reviews were gone. Her clinic's website silently redirected to a generic, out-of-service message. But this meeting would decide if her license was permanently revoked. She walked in confident at first, dressed business casual like she was heading to brunch.
Until she saw me.
Her face didn't break, not immediately, but I swear I saw her grip her folder just a little tighter. Like maybe, for the first time, she wasn't sure what game we were playing. Good. She didn't know this was the final round. I stared at her from across the table, reminded of the first time I ever walked into her office. How badly I needed someone to listen, to guide me, to help me find myself in a crumbling marriage. And instead, I'd found the wrecking ball disguised as a warm smile. They asked me to speak. I didn't perform. I didn't cry. I told the truth like it was arithmetic, simple, undeniable, and irreversibly clear. She didn't just violate ethics. She violated lives. I told them. She sat across from me and listened to my pain that she was actively causing. That's not just misconduct. That's psychopathic. I submitted screenshots, timeline details, signed statements from 3 other women who share disturbing stories, similar patterns, same red flags. I introduced Rachel's story, too. My sister. Still feels strange saying that out loud. I kept it brief, but powerful. She had the chance to connect us, to help us heal a family line broken by deceit, and instead, she told my sister to stop looking. She stole more than trust. She stole time. Betrayal is emotional murder, and silence is how people like her get away with it. But not today. When I looked over at Dr. Vic, she wasn't writing anymore, or fidgeting. or composing a defense. She was just frozen. Like finally the performance had run out of lines. I left that room changed. Not because of the hearing, but because I hadn't walked in scared. I'd walked in whole. 2 weeks later, I got the letter. Her license was revoked permanently. No practice. No appeals. She was done. The revenge fantasy doesn't feel like fireworks or applause. It just feels like stillness. Like your name is safe again inside your own mouth. Like your reflection finally looks like you again. Caleb emailed me one last time. 5 sentences. Nothing dramatic. No begging, no excuses. Just, you were always better than both of us. Take care of yourself.
Delete.
No response. I don't hate him anymore. But I did outgrow him. And Dr. Vic?
I don't know where she is now.
I don't care. She can never practice again. That's enough. What mattered more, what still matters, is what came after. Because the most beautiful part of all this was Rachel. We went slow. No pressure. No trauma bonding. Just discovery. We met in person a month after the hearing. She stood at the cafe entrance holding a book like a nervous teenager on a first date. When we hugged, it was awkward at first, then familiar, like something our bones hadn't forgotten. And over that coffee, and the hundreds after, we didn't talk about Dr. Vic, or Caleb, or pain. Not that much. We talked about guilty pleasures, travel dreams, old songs, our dad. How different our lives were, but how strangely similar we turned out in all the ways that count. And I realized something. The worst people in your life may tear chapters out of your story, but they don't get to write the ending. You do. And if you're brave enough to speak, to really speak, you'll be shocked by who sits beside you when the noise finally slows down. For me, it was the sister I never knew I had. And my voice, not my tears, not my rage, not my silence. My voice brought her to me. So yes, I lost a husband. Yes, I lost a therapist. But I gained clarity.
Peace.
And someone I didn't even know I needed. A sister, born out of truth. They took what they could. I took it back.